It's time for the movie rating. Tonight's victim is actor C.J. Graham, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, Jason, as well as Friday the 13th Vengeance as Eliza Morrie. Hello.
Excited about talking to you about the movie rating show. I'm kind of excited to talk a little bit about maybe the fan film Friday the 13th Vengeance. Just got off set, got an opportunity to work with Jason Brooks and Jeremy Brown, and also Tom McLaughlin, writer, director of Part 6.
That's very awesome. And tell us a little bit more on Eliza Voorhees, the fact that this is the father of Jason Voorhees, and as well as working with Jason Brooks being Jason Voorhees in this film.
Well, I think the interesting thing is it was nice of them, Jeremy Brown and Jason Brooks, to approach me on this. You know, Eliza Voorhees has never been in the actual film. There's been conversations about him. Of course, you go back to some of the comic books. So it was kind of nice to create a figure that had been in the background but never in the foreground. So with that, Eliza Voorhees has now stepped out of the shadows. There is several kills that Eliza Voorhees does in retaliation to protect his son Jason. And the fun thing is, I got to work with Jason Brooks, and him and I got to square off in one scene, and I'll leave that as a teaser, kind of like a Father Knows Best scene, and I'll let you pick it up from there.
Very nice. Now, have you always ever thought about Elias himself while you were Jason yourself? Did you ever think that maybe, or did you think this could be a kind of a effective, a little bit too taboo, a little bit too close to home to maybe change the whole aspect of Friday the 13th?
I think, you know, Friday the 13th itself has become an iconic image over the several decades, and I think it's nice to have a twist. And if you look at all of these series that have been extremely successful, and I'm not just talking about the Harry Potters and the horror films, I'm talking about series, there's always a twist as you get 2-3 seasons down the pike. In this case, 2-3 decades down the pike, and it's nice to put a twisted sense as to the DNA behind Jason.
Yeah, with the fact that this character is like so taboo that, you know, some people didn't even want to like either touch upon it or didn't feel the need to do it. I mean, I love mystery, I really do, in a lot of these characters, especially Jason Voorhees. But with this particular film, Friday the 13th Vengeance, I think this is going to be touching a little bit in depth, a little bit more in a personal note. And not only that, I don't think it's going to ruin anything, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to like ruin the character or the aspect of the whole thing. I think this is going to be a new chapter or something, a new taste with an old formula.
I think you're right. I think Jeremy Brown has done a good job of sensitivity that the principal is Jason, but there's always an opportunity to fall back on how did Jason become who he is. Yes, he had a mother, but he also had a father. And with that, touching upon the sensitivity and not overkilling, no pun intended, where the father becomes a principal in it, but for him to fall back on some sensitivity that his father had taught him, I think it would be a nice twist outside just the camp counselor mentality.
Yeah, and every time that, you know, Vengeance keeps releasing like bits and pieces of what we are allowed to see, it does seem like this story is something more to relate to the actual Friday the 13th saga. And do you think that, you know, this is more of a like an attention grabber for even studios to look upon this film itself, saying, hey, this should have been part of the actual the sequels itself?
Two answers to that. Number one, unfortunately, it's been 10 years, and our fan base has been extremely loyal over that decade waiting. And so I'm hoping that the major studios take a look at how this is received so positively, and it gives them an opportunity to get out there and say, you know what, we've got to get this moving forward. We owe it to the people that have been so loyal to us since 1980 to move forward with a positive role of Jason as a character. If you go back, Jason was just an actor, a stuntman, and as the years have progressed, about 1986, when I did Jason Lives, if you look at it, Jason became the principal in the film. It was originally about the camp, it was originally about the counselors, but all of a sudden this hockey mask took front and center. And so now we're decades into it where worldwide everybody knows that hockey mask. And there's been a lot of great actresses and actors that have had the opportunity to work on a Friday the 13th, and I think bringing Eliza Voorhees into the mix just creates a little more eeriness about the whole concept. Jeremy Brown, the writer-producer, had originally conceived the idea that Eliza Voorhees would just be a gray, shadowy figure in the background. However, the fans are the ones that really got engaged and involved, where all of a sudden I went from a 2-3 day shoot to a couple weeks of shooting, and instead of just being there, started actually killing a few people with my son Jason. So the fans are the ones that got the Eliza Voorhees bugged, and we're hoping that just becomes, you know, a piece of the Jason as he goes forward.
Oh, I totally agree. And Jason Lives, I think, in my opinion, with Jason Lives, I think Jason has a more better sculpted as a character with this particular film, because you see him like better instincts in terms of killing. You see him, he's more brutal. You see he's a heck of a lot smarter compared to the victims themselves. And you see a little bit of curiosity, like the scene with the RV. Like you see him, the two teenagers about to fornicate, and then he's like, what's that all about? And then, or particularly the scene where he goes in the girls' cabin, the little girls, and he's looking at the kid like he doesn't know what to do here.
And I think that's true. I mean, the main thing, Jason has never as a character harmed a child. Himself being a child that was harmed, I think he's got that sixth sense to have a protective nature for children. However, the people that did him wrong, he has a revengeful pattern of retaliation, and I think that's kind of where this has gone. As far as the Eliza Morrie, he's going to be an interesting character because Jason Brooks, who plays the Jason in Vengeance, and I are a very similar size, and the photographer on set, per Jeremy Brown's instructions, had us stand side by side facing off, kind of like a WWF fighters, and we were both in full wardrobe, and of course there's a light behind us, and it's a pretty eerie looking photo. It also just happens that at night, one night, we had a full moon with a clear sky, and Jeremy himself used his personal phone and a flashlight to get a great photo of Eliza Voorhees' full wardrobe with, 3 months worth of beard and this long stringy hair, and of course this trench leather coat that they have me wearing. And it's a pretty great photo that Jeremy Brown himself came up with.
What are your thoughts on the fact that you yourself have been Jason Voorhees? Not only that, you worked with another Jason Voorhees, which was the late great Steve Dash, and now you're working with what I call a new age Jason Voorhees. But and the fact is, he looks like he's doing really well playing this character as well. Can you give your insights a little bit between Jason Brooks' style and then having to work with Steve Dash within the brief moments that you did have?
Let's remember that Steve Dash has told everybody that if he knew today what he knew back then, none of us would have had a job because he'd have played Jason all the way through. And that's a quote with a couple big words in there that Steve liked to use. So with the secondary question as far as Jason Brooks, I look at Jason going back kind of as Richard did in part 3. He was very charismatic. He worked very well in the wardrobe. Jason Brooks himself, we've had a few conversations because he has asked a little bit of advice here and there because he doesn't want to do wrong to the character. He doesn't want to step into a role that myself, Ken, Kane, Derek, or any of us have done and to do shame to the part because of the character. So he's been very well informed, inquisitive, asking questions to include when he goes out to do these conventions to promote the movie, how he approaches even our youngest fans of 5, 6, 7 years old to those that are in their 70s. So I think the nice thing about Jason is he's looked back as Richard Brooks and Ted White, seeing how everybody has played the part and used them as role models so that he would make sure that he represents the Jason character with class and style all the way through.
Yeah, that's awesome too, because a lot of times, especially when they're making new films like remakes or something like that with an iconic character like that, they just look at the films and then see the style of the film, the structure of the film, but they don't really examine the characters or the people who actually portrayed these characters from if it was more than one person. They just play with it and then they think it's going to be dark and scary and they think they're going to sell off the crowd with that, but that's not the case.
I think exactly, and with this film, for instance, again, my character grew from just a couple quick days of shooting into a couple weeks. And to me, I always look at things positively. My personal self, I just donated what was to be my salary to the Shriners Children's Hospital, the Seattle Burn Unit. And one thing about that is that's very close to a good friend of mine, Kane Hodder, with him having this terrible ordeal many years ago from a bad stunt where the burn unit is something that's close to his heart also.
Yeah, I'm glad that, he's still kicking and the fact that he's still supporting everything that he still believes in, as well as, the Jason Voorhees character, yourself, and everybody else involvement. So, really, really good stuff. But when it comes to these, with the passive of horror films in the last couple years, do you think that horror has gone to almost like an intervention on trying to reinvent horror?
I don't know if it's a reinvention. I think what's happened, Mike, over the past 10 years with technology, IT, high definition, Wi-Fi, camera coverage, it's become much more accessible to a larger group, a larger foundation. And I think if you start talking about Friday the 13th at an open conversation, you probably will be surprised how many people are horror closet people that will say, I love Friday the 13th, but they don't have a normal conversation about it until somebody in the group says, I grew up on Friday the 13th. So I think what occurred is the platform, the media, the social media platform has become so easily accessible for a larger group of fans that it's had a domino effect. And I think on top of that, the accessibility of being able to do a film like Vengeance using Kickstarters and fans being engaged because of them being so appreciative of the Friday the 13th has become a much easier role than it was even 5 years ago. So I think going back right now, you take a look at it, you can actually take a look where Friday the 13th has had a real good run, and the hockey mask, again, going back to that, is iconically known worldwide. Now, if you show a picture of C.J. Graham, they may not know C.J. Graham. You show a picture of Tom Cruise, they'll tell you that's Tom Cruise. But I can almost assure you, if you show a picture of a hockey mask, they'll know it's Friday the 13th.
It's such a long road to where some of these, like Friday the 13th, and as well as these iconic other franchises, have made a household name for themselves. But speaking of which, how would you define between the difference of a cult following and a horror trend?
Well, I think the words following and trend have two different meanings. A trend is a 10-year venue, something's going to happen, kind of like ripped jeans in the 80s was a trend. Well, it's back. Now, a cult following is something that's been there and never left, but again, it's gotten on a broader scale, as I said, with the social media. I think the Friday the 13th carries both of those tendencies. I think along with the fact that the Friday the 13th itself, anybody can play Jason because of the hockey mask. It doesn't matter if you're tall, medium, purple, green, or blue. You put a hockey mask on and you can be Jason. And I think that's the attraction for the masses. You know, you don't have to be anything spectacular, a brainiac, or special. Put a hockey mask on and you can go into cosplay of who you want to be as Jason. And again, Jason has never had malice to young people, so that's a very positive. And Jason has only had malice to people that did him wrong. Again, I think that's just proven a point that Jason has carried over generation to generation. And I've had people that are in 3 generations come up to me to take photographs, and I mean people that are 7 years old, people that are 25 years old, and then the grandparent who's in their 60s. All at the same time. The Jason concept, the Halloween concept, Freddy Krueger and Leatherface have the iconic generational concept for generations, decades, that they have had a popularity and will continue to be. And in today's society, comic cons, horror cons, theatrical conventions have all come together, tattoo conventions into one because of the social media revolution that everything has been put together. So if you go to a convention, you will see Alice Cooper sitting next with me, and 2 tables down, you'll see William Shatner from Star Trek, Captain Kirk. And it's all mixed into the next row. You'll see a WWF fighter, and then all of a sudden you'll see the voice from Scooby-Doo. And I think that's where we talk about it, you know, when you talked about the word cult and a trend. I think it's just something iconically that picks up momentum. Again, with the social revolution of media, the way things are followed has continued. The simplicity of a Jason character for Halloween or for a costume party, it makes it so easy that anybody can put it on and become that character. So there's a connectivity with multiple generations and multiple people.
Oh, definitely. And it's really amazing how people, and now that it gets people together for something that's like so horrific, terrifying in cinema. Everybody's getting together, playing as these characters, and just having a good, fun time.
It is true. And if you take a look how well the video game, it's just amazing. Again, another generation coming through with technology advancing as it has become, that there's another room of engagement of people that are now into the video games and now would have never known about the Jason or the Friday the 13th if it hadn't been for that genre to come together.
We got a couple submitted fan questions if you got some time.
Sure, let's do it.
This one is, believe it or not, is Sean Lutzis. And he says, what the hell happened to the Raiders in London last year?
Well, see, I'm a loyalist or a cult follower of the Raiders, and that's what Sean is saying. And, Sean probably is thinking about those screaming chickens up there in Seattle and doesn't understand that the silver and the black and the white, they look good no matter how they look, and that no matter what, Ken Stabler will always be number one. So I think that might be that Sean guy up in Seattle always talking about the hawk or the seabirds, whatever they're called, and I just wish him the best in the future.
And this one is from Kelvin Mercer, and he says, how different will your portrayal as Eliza Voorhees be compared to Jason Part 6?
There will be a similar feature structurally, obviously, which I think is the real good character about Jason Brooks and myself. I think secondarily is the momentum and the walk of the character has that resonation going back to Part 6 all the way. So I think the fans, when they see me stalking some of the hunters that I kill and a couple characters, they're going to see a very similar stalk that Jason once had in Part 6. There's also a scene where I kill a police officer, a sheriff, and how I physically take her body and break it. I think will bring back some of the Part 6 character that was truly about the force of the nature of power rather than the blood and guts.
And that's really cool, because I'd rather the nature of power rather than just pure blood and guts, and then just for the viewer to focus on that point rather than it's like, oh my gosh, like this guy is no joke, don't mess with this guy.
And I think I like that about it, because the character itself did not require a lot of dialogue. It was a minimal amount of very direct dialogue. It was more physical features with the longer hair and the beard, the strong sarcasm, like towards the graveyard digger, that he should keep that to himself. But at the same time, it's almost like a Rambo type of person that just doesn't stop, but doesn't say too much, but enough to get the communication across.
Kelvin Mercer also asks, have you ever had interest in taking a part of another role in horror icons such as Michael Myers or even Leatherface?
Back in the 80s, there wasn't really a lot of work for big actors, actresses that are stunt people like my size, give or take 6'3", 250. In those days, I wish there would have been a market where somebody represented people as they do today, because I would have loved, even at those days, to step into the wardrobe of a Leatherface or a Michael Myers to continue the genre of being able to play a villain, always a bad villain. To me, being a principal and being sane, well-known is great, but at the same time, there's so much work for the right person that can characterize a villain. And if that means you've got horns or red eyes or just the majestic size that can be added to, that would have been a great opportunity. I think in today's era, there's more opportunity for larger people, but you have to remember back then, with all due respect to Sylvester Stallone, I think he's 5'11". Mr. Schwarzenegger, 6'1", maybe 230 on his best day, Mr. Universe. But, at my size, and Lou Ferrigno is a good example, he's 6'3", 260. He's a big man. And I think it limited the amount of work that he was able to do as a result of his structure.
I definitely agree with on the structure part. This one comes from Corey Kaufman. He says, what is it horror brings to the table that other genres don't?
I think it brings, and this is an opinion, I think everybody has a different perspective, but I think it brings a different perspective from all people, because all of us get frustrated at times, and all of us have an imagination. I think the horror genre allows us to use our imagination, both positive and negative, but at the same time, it's just that. It's an imagination. It's a creativity nerve that we're allowed to go out and think of ways that we could put films together and structurally do it without bringing any harm to anybody, of course. The object is to have fun with it. It's a theatrical play on stage, but it's done through cameras, makeup, and some great stunts by a lot of good people.
Corey Kaufman also says, what makes a project take off into flight? Is it good script, the director, the casting crew?
Well, at the end of the day, if your casting crew, which is the foundation of your network, are not 100% on board, it doesn't really matter how good, how much budget, or anything, you're going to fail. One thing I learned this about 45 years ago in the military, that if you do not have the right people around you, you will not succeed. Period. So I believe the cast and crew are your foundation, and then you build up from that perspective when it comes to building that structure. Otherwise, your structure is going to fall down.
Well, go ahead and plug in anything that you want to plug in, your website, anything that you are going to be about to release, or even conventions, signings, and so forth.
Right now, I've got May 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I'll be up at Crypticon, right across from the Tech Airport at the Doubletree Inn. The Vengeance crew will be there promoting, of course, the Vengeance film. But I'm excited about that just because, I grew up in Seattle. I left about 45 years ago when I went in the military. So it's always nice to go home and just kind of see the territory. And then right after that, I'll be doing the Galaxy Con in Richmond with Alice Cooper. That's May 31st, June 1st, and 2nd. Alice Cooper and I will be there together. I'll be in full wardrobe, and if you remember, Alice Cooper did the music, Man Behind the Mask, and he's back. So that's going to be a great photo opportunity for the fans to have myself in wardrobe and Alice Cooper in it to take some professional photographs with us. And then, just my website, jason6.com, and take a look at what I've got coming up.
Well, there you have it, everybody. That is actor C.J. Graham.